Thank you. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm grateful to see such a big group tonight. I wanted to start off by welcoming you to the museum, and I'm very happy to have the honor to say a little bit about the Richardsons. Our family was very prominent in Minden for a while, and then we've all kind of moved away and married off and that kind of thing. So anyway, it's been fun. I have to make a confession that when I started this, I only knew that E.S. was my great uncle. I knew they had a school name for him, and I knew that he was president of Tech. That is all I knew. That's all I knew. So this has been really fun for me because I enjoy doing research, to be able to go through and find out information. Nearly every day I found out something new about him that it was just astonishing that I think most people in Minden don't know. So tonight you're going to discover E.S. Richardson like I did through all the research. So this has really been fun. Now, we're lucky tonight to have some Richardsons that are here in the audience that have come from in town, out of town, and out of state. So with the Richardson relatives, all stand up. Show us who you are. There we go. We have a bunch of them. There you go. That's awesome. Okay, first I want to thank Jessica for letting us do this, and back and forth with, you won't believe what all has gone on to get it set up, but I really want to thank Jessica for all of her extra work that she did for our presentation. It's been great. I'd like to introduce you to a piano student of mine from, 100 years ago? Anyway, she is Dr. now, Lisa Flanders-Dick, and I'm going to let her introduce herself to you and tell you a little about how she got involved and roped into this project.
Well, welcome everyone. As Cindy said, my name is Lisa. I was a piano student of hers, but we also taught together at Minden High, along with a few other people for many, many years, and it's so exciting to see some of my dear, dear friends. I am a professor at Louisiana Tech in the College of Education. Thoroughly enjoy, go Bulldogs. We have brought a few things, and I'll talk about some of those, and so will Cindy from Louisiana Tech. But when I say that this is just a little piece of the iceberg, there is so much information, and Cindy has tried to really tone it down to 27 pages.
That was hard, y'all.
Just go ahead and sit down so she can get started.
Yes.
But we are so glad that y'all are here today.
Thank you so much. Well, I told Cindy Walker this afternoon, she checked in with me, and I said, well, y'all need to bring your gown and robe and slippers because you're going to be here till bedtime. And that, when you're doing a program something like this, it's great that you have a lot of material. This is an incredible amount of, it's just unreal. So my difficulty was in trying to take it and condense it down where I could tell you a little bit about different things that he did, but get it down to an hour or so. Anyway, if I go over an hour, you've got to forgive me. The program tonight just explores the remarkable history and legacy of Edward Sanders Richardson and the Richardson family, whose lives are deeply ingrained in North Louisiana. Through perseverance, innovation, and a passionate commitment to education, community, and medical service, I believe that our family has contributed to the city and the state, and at least that's what I hope. Edward Sanders Richardson descended from his grandfather, Ensign John Richardson, who fought in the Revolutionary War in North Carolina. He and his wife had many children, and one of them was Sanders Richardson. He was the 8th, I believe, in a family of 10. Sanders Richardson married Lucinda Outlaw. Yes, the Richardsons are outlaws. We are officially outlaws. And by the way, there's a lot of outlaws in North Carolina. But anyway, so Lucinda Outlaw and Sanders Richardson, they came here with Lucinda's sisters, and they had married Pierces, John and Jacob Pierce, and this family, her sister's kids and all that settled in Dubberly. So if you hear any Pierces, they're probably kin to the Richardsons as well. So they came to Louisiana with Sanders Richardson, Lucinda, their kids, their sister's kids, which was 15 children. Can you imagine crossing the Mississippi River with 15 children? I can't imagine how they possibly did that. And they came from Twiggs County, Georgia. They crossed the Mississippi and they got here and built a house where Camp Minden is now. Camp Minden took in a bunch of land, and that was Sanders Richardson's homestead. Now, the house burned after the war, and he rebuilt it, and he lived there until he died in 1903. Now, E.S. Richardson and his brother was my grandfather, Samuel Milton Richardson, and that is that's them right there. That's row 4. I call him Uncle Milton, so you'll know what it is. And their sister was Mary Camilla Richardson, and that is Cindy Ritchie Walker's great-great-grandmother. So she's from Sanders Richardson as well. So we have more cousins in here as well, but that's just really cool. Okay, 5 of Sanders Richardson's sons fought in the Civil War. James Sanders Richardson signed up when he was about 21, and he was shot in the head at the Battle of Shiloh. He passed out. He was seen by a Confederate soldier, and they considered him dead. So they sent word home that he had died, and so Sanders Richardson and his family had a funeral for him, and there is an obituary for him that was written in the Bossier Banner about 1862. He was not dead, which obviously not, or we wouldn't be here. So he was found by the Union forces. He was taken to different prisoner of war camps, and he ended up in Williamsburg, Virginia. Now, he ended up having to walk on crutches for the rest of his life. And he was exchanged from Williamsburg and had to get down back to New Orleans, up to Monroe, and over here to Shreveport by himself on crutches. And that was a feat in and of itself. So Sanders Richardson got word that he was back in town, and he could not believe it. And he went to meet the stage, and there was James Sanders Richardson, emaciated. His hair had grown out long. He was in an old Confederate uniform, on crutches. He hardly didn't recognize his son. So when he got off the stage, of course, what men back then did, they had to wear a hat. Well, James Sanders Richardson went and bought him a hat, and the only hat in town was a stovetop beaver silk line top hat. So you can imagine this poor Confederate emaciated soldier walking around downtown Minden on crutches with a beaverskin hat. But anyway, he did come back. The reason I tell you about the family history was because I believe that James Sanders' disability really affected E.S. Richardson. Now, when James comes back, of course, he can't farm because he's crippled. So his wife, I'll tell you about her in a minute. So she ran the farm, so James Sanders taught school, and he taught school at Harris School, which is Harold Thompson's family. So I think Harold Thompson, I think we figured out that they were friends in Georgia, and her family and the Richardson family came together, and they ended up living in Langston together. Is that right? I think that's right. So I think they were friends. I don't think they were necessarily related. So James Sanders got on a mule, and he would ride over and teach, and he taught for about 20 years. But back then, school only happened for about 3 months in the wintertime. And usually they didn't have very qualified teachers, so they just, went for 3 months, learned whatever the teacher knew and wanted to teach. And that was about most of the education that they had, and it really wasn't adequate. So when E.S. and my grandfather, Dr. Sam Richardson, when they were getting ready to get out, they knew that they didn't have the education that they needed to, so they knew they had to educate themselves. So E.S. Richardson actually went to Arkansas, and he finished a course there, and he got his teaching certificate there, and that's when he started teaching. Now, went to school course for about 9 years, and that really wasn't enough, and so his father's disability and his father's work ethic to try to work and take care of his family, even though he was handicapped at the time. And then the fact that he didn't get an education like he wanted to, and his father was the one that was really big about education and community service. James Sanders was a tax assessor for a little while. It really made an impression on E.S. And I think as I tell you more about him, you're going to see how his childhood really affected him and what he ended up being involved with. While he was in Arkansas, he was appointed as a principal, and he did his first building of a school in Arkansas. Now, he was only there for about 4 years, and they gave him a lifetime position in Arkansas. They thought he was so good in that short length of time that gave him a lifetime contract. And I wondered after I did all this research, you see it differently. I don't see it as his, great niece. I see it as a stranger, as a person that I don't know. So it was really interesting to see what would have happened if James Sanders had stayed in Arkansas, but he didn't. While he was in Arkansas, he married, and his wife's name was Zenobia Longino, however you pronounce it. And she was a, what? Music teacher, of course. And she also was a vocal soloist, and so she was pretty famous in her own right. So they married, and they had 5 children. Now, by 1904, at the age of 29, E.S. was listed as a professor in the Bienville Parish school system. Professor Richardson was elected teacher and principal there starting in 1905. One of his building projects was a new brick building for Bienville School. Now, there was a building on top of a hill, and E.S. decided that would be the great place to build a school. What he was good at was to getting people to work with him. So he got the boys and girls on Saturdays to go up and clean the brush around the school and get it all cleaned up. And they loved doing that together. Second thing he did was he got some people together, invited the neighbors to come to a barbecue. And then he would tell them about, we need this new school, it's going to be great at this location, and guess what? It passed. So in 1908, the State Board of Education required that agriculture be taught to all the elementary schools. Now, we don't have that today, but that was really important back then. To quote a writing by Eunice M. Perryman, quote, "He was a pioneer in selling the citizens on the value of instructing by agricultural authorities for boys and girls." Now, I want you to pay attention to this next part. In advancing this program, he developed projects of exhibits by youths at fairs and festivals and attending short courses by junior farmers and homemakers. How many of y'all remember fairs where they had exhibits and judging? How many of y'all remember that? You brought your jam or your quilts or whatever. That's what E.S. pioneered here. It might have been going to other places, but he really pushed that. And by doing that, it got the kids out of the local schools and got them to a central location where they could have displays about agriculture and new ways of doing things by having them come to the fair. Plus, it taught them skills that they would need to run a home. So this is one of the things I thought that was really interesting. The National Corn Club, they had a tomato club, a corn club, a pig club, and probably like we have now. But anyway, the National Corn Club Show was an exhibit held in Columbus, Ohio in 1911. The prize was a Buick automobile valued at $500. That's a lot of money. And guess who won? Some of y'all are going to recognize this name, I hope. Stephen Henry from the Melrose Plantation in Natchitoches Parish. How many of y'all have ever heard of the Henrys in Natchitoches? Okay, well, this young man won a $500 car simply by displaying his things. Now, what is happening now is that in 1911, you have kids, little rural, small town, Webster Parish kids, that are going to Ohio to display their winnings or whatever they display, the corn, whatever. So you don't think of kids here in Webster Parish going that far away from home. So not only was his students noticed, but he was being noticed because he was their coach. Now, at this time, the State Superintendent of Education was none other than T.H. Harris from Claiborne Parish. In 1908, Edward Sanders Richardson was elected superintendent of the Bienville Parish School System 2 months after building the school was approved. During the entire year of 1910 and part of 1911, Superintendent Richardson was faced with enlarging old school districts and creating new ones where they needed. This became a very touchy subject. Small communities wanted the schools to be built where they lived and not the center of the population of most people. They didn't like that. It was also in this time and work experience that he began and championed for the rest of his life equal education for all races. This passion drove him to establish equitable school buildings in all areas of Bienville Parish. Now see, back at the time, you had a really nice school and an area for wealthy people, and not so great schools in rural areas with, low income. Now, it was difficult for him to get people to work together, and I think that's probably a skill that very few people have, is where they can get people to work with you, and especially with people they're not used to working with. Now, he could have easily given that up because he was in the middle of a lot of controversy. He was getting pulled from side to side of, yes, we need to do this, or no, we don't want to do that, and whatever. But he was able to manage that to where they got everybody to come together and to agree. I was told by a historian in Webster Parish that there were factions in this parish at this time that could have hurt him. And it only took a phone call to the powers that be, and someone could have certainly stopped E.S. from doing what he did at the time. So I just want you to get the perspective of what he knew was out there. And he could have easily, under that threat, have given that up and said, no, I'm good, I'm going to the house. But he didn't, he stayed with them, which I really respect him for that. Despite it all, the Bienville Parish School Board passed a resolution in support of E.S. Richardson because of the success attained in modern methods by the education organizations, both parish and statewide. Now, this is an early example of how E.S. Richardson got an idea. He would explain it to people. He would encourage people to adopt this idea. He would raise funds for it and complete it. And you will see he does this over and over and over. On July the 5th, 1911, Superintendent E.S. Richardson offered his resignation to accept the position in the Agricultural Extension Department at LSU. Bienville Parish had successfully made strides, and they had progressive spirit because of him. He fought many battles on every front, but he moved to his new position with the positive wishes of the Bienville Parish School Board. That's a trick. At the start of his new job in Baton Rouge, the Agriculture Department at LSU had a train. Now, the train had 2 stock cars, 2 implement cars, 1 general exhibit car, a Pullman sleeper, a dining car, and a coach. Now, this train would travel. Hundreds of citizens would meet them at the train. This is what the train looked like, and that one of the display areas in there. Now, the train was vital to bringing new farming methods to rural Louisiana because they depended on their farms. This is not, oh, I'm going to go to the store and buy groceries. They ate what they raised in their yard, and if something happened, they had a disease, they planted it too early, planted it too late, they had nothing to eat. So agriculture was really important at the time. Personnel from the Ag Department at LSU and home economics teachers from Centenary College and the Louisiana Industrial Institute participated. Now, the women would discuss food preparation, nutrition, sanitation, and health. And this is kind of an example of them doing that. Now, you would think you would know that, but they didn't. E.S. traveled the state teaching farming techniques to those who could not meet the trains. And this is what he wanted to do. He knew he was reaching the mass of people, but he was not reaching all the farmers. And of course, this is, I think it's circled. This is, go back one few.
Yeah,
I believe, where it is.
Last name.
This is C.S. right there. He looks like a Richardson. I can tell it a mile away. Stands like a Richardson. My dad used to. Okay, now during the years of 1913 and 1914, E.S. Richardson saw the need to teach the farmers who could not get to the train stations. Now, he stayed up nights trying to dream up a way to do that. So he talked to other people about it, and he finally came up with his idea. He asked Jasper Ewing, who was a commercial photographer down in Baton Rouge, to help produce the first educational films in the state of Louisiana that could be shown from a car. A car. Now, Jasper Ewing is quoted as saying, "Everyone thought we were crazy," end quote. Just, what are you talking about? Now, the funding to get this to work was another accomplishment of E.S. because he had to go to the LSU president at the time. And this man was named Colonel Thomas D. Boyd. And he was a military man. And his nickname, I guess you call it, is Stone-Faced Colonel. And he always said no. Always said no. Well, this silver-tongued E.S. Richardson goes down there, and not only did he convince him that this would be the first of its kind, it would bring new education directly to the farmers in the field. The president not only approved it, but he bought him an Overland car. Now, none of the departments at LSU at the time had their own car, and even the governor of Louisiana did not have his own car. E.S. Richardson talked this man into buying him an Overland car. So this is sort of a sketch of how they did it. So what they wanted to do was to show this silent movie to the men and women and their families at the farms. And so it was there was a box here. There's another screen in a minute they'll show. There's a box there that had something to do with a shovel, but it projected this. Now this is 1913, 14. Okay, they don't have electricity in their houses. They don't even have electricity, much less have a silent movie being projected in their yard. So it was quite the thing. Now E.S. and Jasper Ewan had already made 3 movies, silent movies, and E.S. would show that in his classes in agriculture down at LSU. One of them was called, one had to do with the winter cover crops, one had to do with cultivation of cotton, and the other one was named The Cows Are Coming. Those were the 3 films that he showed in class. That showed the reclamation after the 1912 flood. Now they were shown all over Louisiana, even in small farms. Now, this was not an easy adventure. This is actual the car, and thanks to Janetta Robinson at the library, and she printed. If y'all want, I'm gonna pass this around. If y'all want to look at it a little bit better, this is what the car looked like stuck in the mud on our really good Louisiana roads. No, they're much better now, right? Yeah. And this is supposed to be part of the car that they used when they rigged it up to play it at the farm. So thanks to her, she pulled that out for me. She had a lot of information. Now, you can imagine E.S. Richardson. He's in his 30s at the time. I think he was about 38. And they're riding around in this open-air car in the summertime, no air conditioning, and they got stuck constantly. So a lot of times they were just on the side of the road, covered in mud, just hoping somebody would come and could pull them out. So it's had to have been an adventure, and they don't have shocks on cars back then. So to me, that showed me how determined he was to make sure that all the farmers got the information and not just the ones that could get to the train station. He could have just have easily stayed in a clean, environment, but he really got down and got with the rest of them. Many news articles, including this one in the Shreveport Journal, November 6, 1914, gave details of this crazy idea of E.S. Richardson, Ewing, and the Ag Department. Another newspaper at the time said, quote, "It promises to revolutionize the country moving picture business and enormously increase the activities of the Extension Department." The article also included the letter from Washington, D.C., dated October 20th, 1914, from the United States Department of Agriculture asking for the details, and this is Washington, asking for the details of how to engineer a car to run a movie. He's again being noticed in Washington, D.C. Now, this could not have come at a better time, because the World War I began in July 28, 1914, and this made farming in your backyard critical, because what they were sending overseas. So people need to know how to grow their crops, what they can grow in their area, when's the right time to plant and all that. So this was really super important at the time. During the first 7 months of 1915, the Junior Extension Service of LSU, visited 140 schools in 40 parishes and showed the movie to an estimated 23,340 children, school patrons, and farmers. That's an incredible number back then. Richardson's invention expanded. Not only did he show movies, but he expanded to provide heat so they could have cooking demonstrations in people's farms and use the car wherever he went. For many, this was not only the first moving picture that they had ever seen. And keep in mind that they, of course, didn't have electricity at the time. 35 years later, on January 23rd, 1949, the Times-Picayune magazine section labeled Edward Sanders Richardson as a granddad of visual education. Now, how many teachers do we have in the room? Okay. Have any of you ever used an educational video? You can thank E.S. Richardson for that. So, and I know we all have, but he really is the one that's been credited with inventing educational video. On October 1st, 1919, Professor Edwin Sanders Richardson resigned from the Agriculture Department at LSU. Now, the boys and girls who he had taught for all those years now have their own homes. They've grown up. They're using his methods and his techniques in their homes as adults. He also formed connections with the majority of Louisiana rural residents. And they just thought the world of him, that he would come and bring and go through what he did to get the car there and rig it up and go to all that trouble. So he got to meet a whole lot of people traveling around the countryside with his crazy idea. Now, no one really knows why E.S. Richardson left LSU. It was thought that he was selling oil leases with his brother, Sam Richardson. I'm not sure whether that's true or not. But what it did was that it put E.S. Richardson back into Webster Parish. So he's back at home. Not long after he came back home, James Sanders Richardson, his father, passed away. On January 4th, 1921, E.S. was unanimously elected as superintendent of the Webster Parish Schools to succeed Thomas W. Fuller, who had passed away. Now, how many know the Stewart families in Minden? A lot of people know the Stewarts. Mr. William Green Stewart, at the time, was the president of the Webster Parish School Board. And he stood for the idea that the school board should make the final decisions for the school board. And at the time, that wasn't what happened. There was other people involved in the decision making. He also believed, like E.S., that every child had the right to have a good education. W.G. Stewart and E.S. Richardson were very close in their ideas about education because both of them had been raised in country schools where they did not get a complete education. Despite this, look at all they accomplished, even not having the education as a child that they did. I want to make sure that I noted here that E.S. would not have accomplished all that he did if it hadn't been for William Green Stewart. Now, E.S. was the one that would come up with the ideas, but if William Stewart did not okay them and he couldn't get the citizens to support him, it didn't go anywhere. So when I talk about what E.S. Richardson accomplished, it's not totally by himself by any means. He just happened to be the one whose name is attached to it. But he would get the ideas, and then they would get people to support that. Webster Parish School and the new superintendent Richardson's first task was to go around Webster Parish and to collect information. What the schools look like, what did they need, where are the roads, where are the kids, and they did this really extensive survey so they would know what to do. What they found was that there were 39 school centers. 35 of them had 1 to 2 room classrooms, little small schools. Many of them were taught by unqualified teachers, and this course had not improved much since the time that he was a student, and that's been about 40 years later. In fact, according to an article by John Agan, there was only one black school in the parish in 1921, and it was in Minden. Now, there were some black schools that were out of churches, but that's all the education that they got. With the information gathered from the survey, Superintendent Richardson and the school board started a public relations blitz to support a consolidation campaign by persuading the rural residents that they would get a better education if they would come to larger schools. So this is what they came up with. So this of course would be where the schools are, and these are the roads to get the kids to the schools. Okay, so they all had to be really, really organized. By 1925, the schools had been divided into 10 centralized state-approved high schools, and they were built at the center of the available population at the time. So educators, even today, if you have worked for the Webster Parish school system, if you have gone to a school, where you went was where it was placed because the Webster Parish School Board and E.S. Richardson. So all educators in Webster Parish are affected by E.S. simply because where the schools are was where they decided they need to be located, which I think is really interesting. One of the keys to success was a newspaper. So what he did, he would be very open with the public, and this is what our plans are going to be, and he would detail it in the newspapers. This is what we need to raise money for. We need to pass a tax to do this. We're going to build this wonderful facility. So he was really cognizant of the idea that the people need to understand what they wanted to do so that they would vote for it. Good roads and maintenance of school property were also vital to transport the students to the new school. So you'd have this big school, and even elementary, they called them high school, but the elementaries would come to that school. They had to be bused in there. Superintendent Richardson contracted with W.H. Luck Company of Minden to build bodies for the school trucks and buses, and brought rural students into the larger schools. And he actually had a sign. He was really worried about the kids' safety, so he had a sign on the bus that said slow, children on board, or something like that. And that was the first time they've ever had a safety sign on a school bus, and that's what E.S. Richardson cooked up. Now, organizing the schools, building strong, quality schools in the parish would have been a great accomplishment for itself and Superintendent Richardson, and he could have said, okay, I'm done. But he didn't do that. He was using the limited time he had to form a concept in education that started in Webster Parish, and it was literally adopted all over the United States. John Agin also noted in an article in the Minnepress Herald on May 21st, 2019, that E.S. formulated this idea for the county unit plan while he was working in the Ag Department back in 1911 to 1919. Now, the county unit plan, which is important, consolidated inefficient rural small schools into larger centralized high schools to provide better teachers, better resources, transportation, and then vocational opportunities. He knew that it was important that students knew how to do daily type of chores, not just not just courses that would take you to college. He championed education for the rural communities, including all races, with the addition of agriculture training, vocational studies, and home economics aimed at preparing students for practical trades. He pushed for better trained teachers with college training. It included improved taxpayer-funded transportation, and they brought them in from outlying areas. Now, to this end, he created a large display showing Webster Parish before the county unit plan, and then what it looked like after the county unit plan. And he took this display to the state fair in Baton Rouge. Well, when T.H. Harris saw it down in Baton Rouge, he was so impressed. He said, "You have got to take this to Cincinnati, Ohio." So E.S. packs it all up, and he goes to and speaks at the National Education Association meeting February 25th for the national meeting of superintendents, the ones that run the schools. He displayed it right at the beginning of the building. When you first walked in the door, there was this great big display, so you had to see it. It was perfect location. Then he gave this really, as they said, strong speech, telling all about the county unit plan, how important it was, how it could improve education. He was a really good speaker. He forcefully delivered the address to superintendents from all sections of the United States. After his presentation, words of praise came from Louisiana, Iowa, New York, Wisconsin, Massachusetts, Kentucky, and South Carolina. The Southern School Journal, and we'll take just a second to get this. Thank you, Lisa. This is the actual copy that in the archives at Louisiana Tech. This is the Southern School Journal, Kentucky Journal, dedicated education interest of Kentucky. Superintendent E.S. Richardson is on the front cover, and this is in April of 1925. Now, as I open this, and there's a point that I'm doing this for, so hang with me. As you go through and look at this, you'll see these pictures. Now, this is significant, so stay with me. Does that look familiar? Does that look familiar? Y'all just saw that, right? Okay. So this is explaining the county unit plan in that brochure right there. Okay. Let me find where I was. Okay, so he was noted in that journal. T.H. Harris sent him a letter on March the 10th, and this is one of the letters, a copy, of course. This is one of the letters, and this is the letter I'm going to talk about in just a minute. So these are copies of these letters. Congratulating ES by saying your exhibit made a remarkable fine showing and was highly praised from people from all parts of the United States. I do not know of one that has ever directed nationwide attention to our program in public education in a more forceful and concrete fashion than was done by your very highly meritorious exhibit and the attractive way you presented it. State Superintendent Harris enclosed, and this is the letter, State Superintendent Harris enclosed this letter. He said, I am reimbursing you for the cost of making the exhibit, and sent him a check for $92.10. Now, that would be $1,713.90 today. So this is what this looks like. Now, when the Department of Education met in Washington, D.C. in February 1926, E.S. Richardson was there, of course. Before making the trip to Washington, E.S. wrote 100 letters to people that were living in Washington who were from Louisiana and invited them to visit the Louisiana headquarters at the famous Washington Hotel. Now, after his presentation, counties across the nation began implementation. He spoke in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. He traveled to Boston, Massachusetts, Memphis, Tennessee, Conway, Arkansas. He was not above pointing out to other states, this is what you need to do to improve your system here. He would cite problems that he saw and give them individual direction on how they could fix that to make a better education. He spent most of the summers traveling all over the country, helping others to provide the best education facilities for their students. Now, he was invited to speak before the State Teachers Association in Charleston, South Carolina, November 7th, 1929. They even raised money, this is important, they raised money to ship the exhibit so he could have that when he spoke in South Carolina to the teachers. Now, on the way home, he's not going to miss an opportunity. He stopped in Georgia and delivered the address at Statesboro, Georgia, Athens, Americus, and Cartersville, Georgia. So he's going to try to get as many people as he can along the way. On July the 12th, 1931, an article in the Minden Signal Tribune about Richardson's speech to the Division of County Supervisors and Rural Supervisors in Detroit, Michigan, about how the country unit system worked. He displayed his exhibit, had far-reaching effects. Now, with a brochure of clippings, pictures, and related information on rural school conditions, he presented it here to the Webster Parish School Board September 1st, 1931. With his wife and daughter, Ruth, the family traveled a total of 4,500 miles in 8 weeks in the summer, no air conditioning, and to make studies of 1 to 3 room school conditions. Their route in those 8 weeks took them through Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, and Michigan. He is obviously known, all over the country. Now, when you do research, and I do it as a hobby, of course, but when you do research, you'll see something and you'll say, I wish I could find that. Well, I couldn't find the car, so, you're looking for things. Well, I was trying to find a picture for y'all of the display. I couldn't find it. I can't tell you how many hours I sat in the she shed and going through newspapers.com trying to find a picture of this display. And in my logic, I said, well, it had to be big. If South Carolina had to raise the money, it would have to be big. Logic would tell you that. So I came to the museum's meeting back in March, and I was complaining to Jessica. I said, I cannot find this anywhere. And Jessica just looked me in the face like I'd lost my mind, and she said, Cindy, we have it here. Great. Okay, so what you see, Jessica has gone to so much work, y'all. She has taken things down, and she's went to the attic and got these pieces out, and she has put them on display. So make sure that you don't be an idiot like me, and you go around and look at, and this is what he took with him was all these displays. So some of this is before the county unit plan, and some of this is after. Now, what impressed me, not so much that Jessica had it, although that impressed me, was that someone kept it. It is 100 years old. This could have easily said, oh, well, I need, room in the closet, I'm going to store something else, and it could have been thrown away years ago. But somebody must have known enough about it to have saved it. And somebody told me they had it at one of the schools and it was locked up in a closet and only certain people had the key. But nevertheless, the fact remains that this 100-year-old exhibit that put Webster Parish on the map is right here for us to look at today. And I think that's really kind of cool. So it's like the display's birthday. But anyway, so that's really, really cool. So make sure you see that before you leave. After his presentation, of course, he got more and more attention and more people wanted him to come from the different places. And so he was very successful there. And newspaper articles, you can go into newspapers.com and you can look up E.S. Richardson and you could find an article on him in Michigan. You can find articles on him in South Carolina or most of the other states. So he was a well-known name for sure. In 1922, Richardson and others succeeded in passing a bond issue to help fund the Webster Training School for black students and hire a full-time supervisor. A definite building plan was instituted by these two superintendents. The bulk of the funding came from the Rosenwald Fund, with money from the Webster Parish School Board as well as other white organizations. Some of the money was raised by the labor of the black community. By 1926, the school board had built 13 buildings for black education. And it was planned that by 1929 there would be at least enough Rosenwald schools to reach every black student. Superintendent Richardson believed that the educational welfare and development of boys and girls depended on teachers who were prepared for their academic subjects. He also believed that effectiveness in the classroom depended on the ability to create a desirable attitudes and the ability to meet new situations as part of the students. His ideas were published in the Peabody Reflector and Alumni News in Tennessee in 1930. He not only studied and preached on the county unit plan, but also spoke on Negro education at Mount Pleasant, Michigan, July 13, 1931. He predicted that the Negro population, quote, would make outstanding contributions to the world someday in both social and religious fields, end quote. And history has proven it true. After 6 years, it was reported in 1930 that there were now 35 Negro schools in Webster Parish. 25 of them were Rosenwald buildings. He desired to have a Rosenwald school with competent teachers within reach of every Negro child in the parish. In 1932, the Webster Parish Training School was established to train teachers for rural communities, and the facility consisted of an administration building, a trades building, a girls' dormitory, a demonstration building, and a library. By 1931, the Webster Parish schools had new buildings and had been built with a combined cost of $1 million. The total of 187 classrooms on 178 acres of land. Teachers' homes were also provided at the school. Wouldn't that be nice? We got free housing. Superintendent Richardson wanted teachers to continue their education for the betterment of the students. When he became superintendent, there were 18 teachers with bachelor's degrees, 32 with two-year degrees, 46 with certificates by examination, 9 with emergency certificates. When he left, his superintendent there were 17 more teachers, 4 with master's degrees, 65 with bachelor's degrees, 30 with 3-year degrees, and 26 with 2 years of college. E.S. continued his own education in the summers at Peabody College in Nashville, Tennessee. He earned his licentiate, I can't pronounce that word, and was awarded a Bachelor of Science degree, so continuing education meant him. Now, as I was doing my research, one of the things, and nobody said it to me, but as I'm doing this research, something jumped out at me. And what it was is that E.S. Richardson would appoint or select women to be the head of the department or the head of their unit, or he would give women positions of authority. That didn't happen in the 1920s. Women didn't even have the right to vote, and yet he valued them and their expertise and their training and their education, and he would put them in positions of authority. To me, that's, and it didn't say that, but I kept saying, there's this woman, the head of the department. Here's another woman, head of the department. That really impressed me. I hope that Janetta Robinson from the Webster Parish Library would be here with us tonight, but she was not able to come. I asked her to write for me the portion on the library. Now, Janetta already knew a whole lot about E.S. Richardson, a lot more than I did. But so this is her section that she wrote on Webster Parish Library. To fully understand how all the pieces of the puzzle of acquiring a library for Webster Parish occur, we must go back to a meeting between Julius Rosenwald, president of Sears and Roebuck, and Booker T. Washington of the Tuskegee Institute. The two met in Chicago, Illinois, and a fundraiser at 1911. They discovered a common interest in providing education for rural Southern black communities. Rosenwald accepted a position on the board of directors at Tuskegee Institute. Washington suggested that Rosenwald fund the construction of 6 small rural schools in counties close to the Tuskegee Institute. These schools were built and opened in 1913 and 14 and proved to be very successful. After Washington died in 1915, Rosenwald continued to fund the building of the schools for rural black Americans. The Rosenwald Fund was established in 1917, and it provided matching funds for counties and parishes willing to donate funds towards building these rural parishes and schools. During this time, prominent citizens in Mendon had been desiring to build a public library. 1923 article in the Mendon Tribune newspaper mentions the establishment of 2 circulating book clubs. Now, Mr. Ford stated in the article that the rapid growth of clubs was evidence that Mendon needed a public library. A push for a public library began in 1925 meeting between S.E.M. Culver, the executive secretary of the Louisiana Library Commission, and Mrs. Nancy Ferguson, who was the president of the Women's Department Club. And it was arranged by Mary Mims, a community organizer, and the meeting was really important in establishing Mendon's desire for a library. Meanwhile, Ms. Ferguson, who was appointed chairman of the first library committee, had gathered enough signatures to petition to request the Webster Parish Police Jury to make a public library. However, the Webster Parish School Board, led by E.S. Richardson, would not support the library system. Why do you think E.S. would not support that? Because it would not be equal for the blacks. He would not, no library, you either have no library or you're going to have a library that's equal access to all. So he stopped it right there. This effort lost momentum, and it would be another 4 years before another major push for the library was made. In 1929, Rosenwald began a demonstration library program to highlight the need and effectiveness of libraries in rural areas. There were stipulations in place to have this library, have the funds for the library. And the stipulations were this. They had to have a parish that was willing to abide by the state library law, willing to provide funds for maintenance, willing to hire a trained librarian, willing to serve all citizens of the parish, and willing to be on the supervision of the Louisiana Library Commission, which would provide 1,000 books as startup. Around 1928, Mrs. Stewart became president of the Women's Department Club. Under her leadership, another push was made for a public library. This time, the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. According to an article in the Louisiana Teachers Association Journal written by S.M.A. Culver, the decision to select Webster Parish as a demonstration parish for the state was not made quickly or easily. It came after long and careful study. Webster was named for the demonstration because of the great school system, and that was put in place by E.S. Richardson. Ms. Culver recommended that Webster Parish be considered as one of the Rosenwald demonstrations, and the Rosenwald Foundation agreed to the selection. The proposal was presented to the police jury and the school board, and it was met this time with enthusiasm, and funding was arranged. The police jury contributed $2,500. The school board chipped in $3,000, and the city of Minden did $2,000, and Spring Hill chipped in $500. A library board was set up consisting of Ms. Baker as president, E.S. Richardson vice president, and Ms. Stewart as secretary-treasurer. Webster Parish Library opened its doors in September 1929, and its grand opening, as you can see on that screen, on October 3rd, 1929. If you go back, can you go back one for me? That's E.S. Richardson. This picture of E.S. at the opening headquarters and the main library, which is now located where? What store is there now? Pippa Lane. Pippa Lane is where the library was. And I want you to notice, the words on that school bus there. It was the Chrysler Auto Sale and Storage Building at the time. Branch libraries were located in the 10 high schools for white citizens. And by the way, one thing that I found that was interesting was that people were against having a trained librarian. I don't understand that, but I mean, well, it could be. It could be money, but I kept thinking, why would you? Anyway, some things I guess is over my head. A lot of things are over my head. Okay, so the branch libraries were located in the 10 schools and in the Rosenwald schools for rural black citizens, and a library was built on the grounds of the Minden Training School as a central location for the black citizens. Ms. Mary Harris was appointed head librarian. She had experience with library work and was on the head of the staff of the Library Commission. Now, the theme of this was book service, free for all. And a lot of people didn't really believe that really was free for all, but it was. I had these statistics and I lost them, I couldn't find them, and I just found them again, but I thought they were worth, I know you don't want to listen to statistics, but I thought this was worth me putting it in there. A few years later, in an article in Minden Signal Tribune and the Spring Hill Journal on Monday, December 31st, 1934, page 58, this was reported. On July 1st, 1934, the library reported that during the past 12 months, they had circulated 205,882 books. Of this number, 155,440 went to white students, 50,442 went to black readers. In only 1 month, October 1934, there were 24,488 books and magazines circulated in the Webster Parish Library 1 month. 18,261 went to white people and 6,000 were read by black readers. This 1 month alone, Webster Parish was again gaining statewide and nationwide attention again for the collaboration between the races and the entities to provide equal education to all. The Webster Parish Library has weathered a variety of problems over the years and is still standing, although many thought it would fail. Now, thanks to the forward thinking of E.S. Richardson, this library will be celebrating 97 years in October of this year. And that's amazing. It is worth it. Now, E.S. Richardson's interest in the community affairs outside of education called a small parish to what? Be known on a national stage. In 1930, the year after the Great Depression happened, Webster Parish experienced a terrible drought. Crops burned up in the fields. And it wasn't until about July of that year that it got a really good rain. So the rain helped save the turnips and the peas and the beans. Now, E.S. Richardson sees that, and he knows they're not going to survive the winter. So what does he do? He calls in the home demonstration agents. They have a meeting, and they decide that they're going to provide canning stations all around the parish for people to come and use for free. So people who had vegetables, of course it was in that fall, probably September to November, they would bring their crops there, both races, had the facilities, they were located at the schools, and they would come in there and then they would can. The school board bought cans to can them in at one price, sold it to them at cost, so they would be able to have something to put this in. So both races were working together to try to preserve their food. Okay, So I will try to give you this statistic. After they had canned their vegetables for 2-3 months, then they brought in fresh meat, because the cows and the chickens and the pigs and all that would not have lasted the winter because there wasn't enough food for the people. There certainly was not enough food for the animals. So they brought the meat into these canning stations and they started canning again. Now, the Shreveport Journal editorial on December 12, 1930 said that 50,000 cans of foodstuffs valued at $10,000 had been preserved since October the 12th in 1930. This is December 12th from October the 12th, 2 months. 161 beeves had been canned, and the canned meat was worth $6,500. Now, the project, of course, received a lot of coverage in the area newspapers, and it was all over the Shreveport papers of how the Webster Parish School Board not only served the education, but they served the community. Now, that wasn't enough. Problem that they had was that the farmers could not get their cream to market. So E.S. Richardson said, meet me at the bus stop. So the farmers would come to their bus stop, they put their cream on the buses, and they would take the buses into where they could sell it. Well, that increased the farmers' income exponentially. It was, the money went up way, simply because he had a problem and he figured out a solution. So I think that was one of his things. He would identify a problem, figure out a solution, and get people to raise the money or share the cost and then have it happen. So he wasn't limited to the education needs of all. Now, by 1930, Dr. Luther Longino, a highly respected local doctor, penned in his book, Thoughts, Visions, and Sketches of North Louisiana, that E.S. was so closely associated with the parish school system that it was impossible to separate him from the school system. He talked about the 2 beautiful public school buildings that were erected on the site of the old female college, and that a 23-acre campus was improved. Now, Dr. Longino built a home in Minden at 1201 Broadway in the early 1900s. The home later belonged to Dr. Milton Richardson, E.S.'s nephew. Now, Uncle Milton, to me, bought the house and lived there from March of 1963 to June of 1989. The home is passed now to his granddaughter, Elizabeth Richardson Custer, and is now the owner of the home, and she has furnished it with pieces from estate sales in Minden. So it's kind of captured has representation from different people in Minden, which is really good. Now, this will be our commercial break. We're going to commercial. Liz Richardson Custer calls this house the Minden Bell. It now has 6 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, and it sleeps 14. Please check it out on Airbnb. So if y'all would stand, Liz is here, her dad, Dr. Sam Richardson, who was a doctor here in the 1970s, and her brother, Sam, not Richie, Richardson. Would y'all please stand so they'll know who you are? They're the ones that own the Minden Bell. And now, y'all tired of listening to me talk, I'm sure, so now I'll ask Dr. Lisa Flanders-Dick if she will come present the section on Louisiana Tech.
Well, I am sure that you will not be surprised that with all of this improvement with education, that it did not go unnoticed. And T.H. Harris actually recommended for E.S. Richardson to become president of then Louisiana Polytechnic Institute. And the state unanimously approved this recommendation. Now, funny story, he wasn't out there looking for a job. In fact, several people had asked him about it, and he was like, I have a job. So he really wasn't out there like, oh, I want to leave. But he made it clear that he wasn't actively searching. And one of his professional philosophies was that actually the job should come to the man. And that's exactly what happened. So, nevertheless, After 16 years of service as Webster Parish Superintendent, the school board accepted his resignation. And on Monday, August 17, 1936, E.S. Richardson became the 9th president of Louisiana Polytechnic Institute. Now, true E.S. Richardson fashion, as I have learned, he had immediate leadership. So we're going to just take a brief look at some of his time at what is now Louisiana Tech University. You will notice up at the top corner of this is the welcome edition. Yes, they put out a whole welcome edition saying, woo, the city and the parish are honoring E.S. Richardson. It was a time of celebration. He was getting hundreds of calls. They had a seated barbecue dinner in his honor. It was actually a huge reception that was at Tech Station. There's more than 300 tickets sold. And I think I already said that it was barbecue dinner, but I did not mention that it was like the west side of the stadium. For those of you, I know there's a few of you that know exactly where it would probably be. But he immediately had to start leading because there was a huge campus fire. And this was, it hit the old building, and they needed an immediate place in order to meet. And so within 11 days, he actually had a temporary building. It's called a wigwam. Wigwam? That was built and ready for the fall semester. Now, I'm just going to tell you we're going through building right now. I can't even imagine having something set up that quickly. So he, like within 2 weeks, he had already gotten the funding from the State Board of Education. He did make a few deals with them. Hey, if there's anything in that old building that I can salvage, we will use it. So that would save a lot of money. So it was not to exceed $3,600. So kind of amazing, but they did start in the fall. But there were tons and tons of growth and expansion during this time, so I just kind of bullet listed a few of them because we have to get back to Cindy. I told you how many pages she has, right? Okay.
I'm going to drink this whole thing.
We might need to get you some wine. Okay, so there was a new refrigeration plant, which was a huge value for the dining hall. There were additional showers and dressing rooms and those sorts of things. There were a radio program over in Shreveport that was broadcasting about Louisiana Tech. It was KWKH. Oh, I know. I actually even knew that name. It must have been around for a while. There were improvements to the men's gym. They veneered the building. They made exercise rooms. And one thing that is definitely still going on today was there was extensive landscaping. There was a whole program for it. And if you have not been to Louisiana Tech lately, please come. I think you will be pleasantly surprised and amazed at how absolutely beautiful the campus is. During his presidency, there was growth everywhere, from enrollment to finances, faculty growth, the qualifications again with the teachers. He raised those expectations. There were additional schools. By 1940 and 41, the School of Agriculture opened and enrolled 200 students. Increased physical facilities and joined the Southern Association accreditation. Now, while he was there were 7 new buildings. And so one of the items that we grabbed, and this is only 8 items. Anyone that's interested in digging, like we have hundreds. But while he was at Louisiana Tech, a 7-building project began. And so you will see that there's several that you may recognize. There's Howard Auditorium. Then we have Reese, and we have Aswell, Robinson. And of course we have the side there. Bogart Hall, and let's see, with Bogart, When he started as president, this is amazing. The School of Engineering only had 6 faculty members and 224 students.
Wow.
I know. It's like, what? I mean, you definitely want to go see their building on campus. By 1940, they were housed in the new Bogart Hall, and construction for a cost of $375,000 was approved during his administration. Now, this is Keeney Hall. There were also Richardson Hall. And this was a clipping with he and the next president, where they were each having a hall named after them. And this is now. We have Cunningham, Mitchell, that are currently on campus. And this is just a snapshot of the buildings that began during his presidency. So this booklet goes into more detail of when it was actually being dedicated at that time. Now, a funny story, while we're on this one, for those of you that have been there, the Lady of the Mist. Yeah, he didn't like her. Just saying. In fact, let me see, there was a quote that he thought it was one of the awfulest things he had seen. So he found that, and I just thought that was the funniest thing, because our freshmen literally go there, and then it is a tradition for when you graduate that you go back to the Lady of the Mist. So that was pretty interesting. Now, with the great expansion during his time, I just wanted to mention, like, his philosophy wasn't like, oh, build it and they'll come. No, just like with the farmers, he was constantly bringing things to people or making things accessible. And one of the things that he did while he was at Louisiana Tech was he really cared about the students, about being able to match them up to various careers. He valued all professions, and he made extra bus routes. How many of you remember when there was a bus that came to Minden, Louisiana? Okay, some of you do. So, like within a 50-mile radius, he had buses going to get the students. You will notice in this picture at Centenary, he was awarded an honorary Doctor of Law degree May 24th, 1938. And so he is now referred to as Dr. E.S. Richardson. And we were fortunate enough to have his mortarboard with us today, as well as an artist rendition of him whenever he received his doctorate. Again, those of you that are nerds and would like to go dig, there's so much. I can hook you up with a lady. She has all kinds of things. Let's see here. I'm almost about to turn it right back over to you.
By the way, do you know why they call it the Tomp?
Oh, I don't, but can you share it?
I don't.
Oh, there we go. Why?
Well, it used to be honky tonk.
Yeah, I thought they used to dance there, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't want to say that for sure.
Then they just dropped the beginning of that and just tongue.
Thank you very much.
Let's see. So there was a turning point in the summer of 1939. There were some financial irregularities. Don't worry, it wasn't E.S. Richardson. Everything's fine. And the chief administration of the university resigned. He was summoned by the Baton Rouge by Governor Leach. He thought he was about to get fired, but he was actually offered the presidency at Louisiana State University. He accepted it. Post turning in his resignation at Tech, he had a very sleepless night. He had tons of calls coming in from friends, and he called and talked to his family to discuss it. And he decided to turn down the presidency at LSU and stay at Louisiana Tech. Now, one of the remarkable things about this, the salary was double what he had been earning at Louisiana Tech, and he was only, I guess, technically president for about 18 hours before he went back and reneged and said that he was not going to actually take the presidency. But unfortunately, his time at Tech was doomed by a governor's race. In 1940, Sam Jones was running against the current governor, Earl K. Long, and it was a very bitter race in which Jones won. He wanted to wipe the slate clean of the Louisiana State Board of Education and install a new superintendent, Mr. Walter J. Burke. And basically, anyone who openly was for the previous governor should not hold any top positions. Well, President Richardson, of course, I mean, you can imagine he had to work with the governor and all sorts of people that were with him just to make Louisiana Tech successful, whether it was financial, whether it was building planning, or what have you. So while he was successful in expanding Louisiana Tech, he lost his job as president of Tech for doing such a good job. Now, there were newspapers and towns, and all these people were just outraged and kept asking them to keep him. He was forced to resign, but they offered him the title of President Emeritus, and for several reasons he turned it down. He said, "You're only doing this just to please the people that are angry right now." Now, funny story is that a letter arrived later that year, so like December the 12th of 1941, Dr. Richardson received a personal letter from Nelson Rockefeller, and it was asking him and the now Louisiana Tech to join a nationwide public discussion and competition concerning inter-American affairs. You can imagine he did not know that he was no longer the president, but can you imagine the opportunities that this could have brought about had he remained president at Louisiana Tech? Okay, so I skimmed right through that, and it is already time for you again.
Thank you. And she actually has a letter from Nelson Rockefeller over there for y'all to look at if you want to see them. They let us, because of her connections, they let us check it out.
And we do have his diaries, like his little journals. Not all of them. We just grabbed like 3 of them, but it's real. There's like, oh,
it's like his diaries.
I was in Cotton Valley at a meeting and things like that. So they're really interesting.
Thank you so much, Lisa. In 1941, when his position at Louisiana Tech ended, he was 66 years old. He certainly could have retired. But in 1942, Dr. Richardson was back at work, and he became the area Webster Parish rent director under the wartime office of the Price administration. He served as executive secretary of the Webster Council, coordinating activities between the federal and parish agencies involved in the expansion of the ordnance plant. Now, what happened with that is they had all these people, they were moving into town to work at the plant. They didn't have the facilities, they didn't have the water, they didn't have anything like that. So that's what ES was doing, was trying to coordinate all that together. He made the first effort of having to start the Chamber of Commerce in Minden, and he was a member of the Minden Lions Club in Minden and Ruston. By 1947, at the age of 72, he was still working. He was a field representative for the Department of Commerce and Industries and predicted that the sweet potato industry would revolutionize Louisiana agriculture. Did it? Yes, it did. He tried to establish points of interest across interstate on Highway 80 for visitors to come and see. On Christmas Eve, 1947, his wife Zenobia passed away. She was buried in Baton Rouge, and she had enabled him to accomplish what she did, and of course ride in the car with him as he's going down these back roads. She served as Tech's first lady at the time. She hosted innumerable dignitaries in her home, prepared meals, provided beds for people that came to town to see ES. On October the 11th, 1950, he passed away at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. A long and useful life devoted to others with the drive to serve the cause of education and the advancement of opportunities for all boys and girls of his beloved state. The Saturday night before, he was at a football game between Louisiana Tech and Stephen F. Austin, right before he died. His brother, my grandfather, Dr. Samuel Milton Richardson Sr., died 6 days later on October 17, 1950. Now, I never knew either one of them. I'm much younger. They were, of course, gone before, but what is so interesting is that people don't realize, and I didn't realize how much E.S. Richardson is still in Webster Parish. Webster Parish School Board honored his legacy by naming a school E.S. Richardson Elementary. It was built in academic year 1949-1950, and E.S. Richardson Elementary School is now the 4th and 5th grade campus that serves the city of Minden. I believe the first principal was Mr. Williams, wasn't it? It was Wayne Williams was the first principal. Along with Stewart Elementary, both schools were built during a post-World War II bond issue. Including J.L. Jones, built around the same time, E.S. Richardson is the only school that is still standing. How many of you attended E.S. Richardson? How many of you were on faculty at E.S. Richardson? That's awesome. Any principals at E.S. Richardson? I talked to a principal, former principal of mine that was my boss at Richardson, and I was doing this program at Richardson, and she's told me that she thought he was just a principal there. And I thought, wow. Okay. Edward Sanders Richardson did not leave behind a single invention or a monument. He did leave a wealth of information about what he did that includes 6,741 times that his name is mentioned in newspapers.com just in Louisiana. And that just stopping in 1950. That's not any mention before that. That's a lot of times. So I made 100% effort, y'all. And I started copying these. Binder 1. Binder 2. And this is the dissertation. And I didn't scratch the surface of all the information that is out there. So that's really interesting. His life demonstrated that lasting progress doesn't come from recognition, but it comes from building systems that continue to serve long after the creator is gone. Through his life, E.S. Richardson emphasized service that was quiet, effective, enduring, and fair. Even today, you cannot separate E.S. Richardson from Webster Parish. His home and legacy permeates many aspects of Webster Parish education. Now, our presentation tonight, I could have given it all by myself. Certainly capable of doing that. Dr. Lisa Flanders-Dick, she could have certainly given the presentation by herself. Janetta Robinson was supposed to be here. She could have given the presentation completely by herself. But in the true spirit of E.S. Richardson, we combined together and we worked together to put on a project. And I think that's really important, that we did it like E.S. Richardson would have done. Now, to give credit where credit is due, most of my research came from the dissertation by Robert Fry. He wrote it in 1966, and he was actually from Shongaloo. Articles from the newspapers from the United States from newspapers.com, the archives at LSU Baton Rouge, which Jerry and I visited, Dr. Lisa Flanders-Dick and the Louisiana Tech University archives, as well as articles from John Agan in the Minna Press Herald, Janetta Robinson with the Webster Parish Library, and Ms. Kay Pruitt and Janetta as my editors. And last but not least, Jessica Gorman. Now, after we break for the evening, I'm sorry that it took so long, and I really did try to cut things down. You can't imagine what I cut out of here. But anyway, I hope you get a chance to walk around and to see the exhibit. And if you can support the Dorcheek Museum with your financial support, that would be certainly appreciated right now as much as any other time. And thank you all for coming.